Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum, Molweni, and all the other languages that are represented here. As a resident of Cape Town, to all my friends who have come from all over the globe, most particularly those that I intersected with in the United States and I met last year in Brazil at the IF20, welcome to Cape Town, and I hope you're going to find it everything that we had promised it to be. Last year in Brazil at the IF20, I spoke about how to move from the moral clarity that religions often have to finding the moral courage to do what that clarity demands. And I was asked, how do we deal with the issue of courage? And for me, courage is, as Immanuel Kant has understood it. He says, for example, that the opposite of short-sightedness is not perfect sight. The opposite of short-sightedness is long-sightedness, and that perfect sight is the perfect middle between the two. In that same vein, courage is not the opposite of cowardice. The opposite of cowardice is recklessness. And courage is the perfect middle because it has the ability to call out the cowards and bring them to action, and at the same time to diminish excessiveness and to diminish extremes and to diminish recklessness and bring them to the middle. And so our courage means our ability to speak to both sides of the equation. Those who are morally coward when they should be standing up, and those who are morally reckless and excessive when they should be measured. And therefore, what we need as moral courage is the ability to speak to both sides of the equation. And it's in that regard that we have invited you to Cape Town, South Africa, with the thematic coherence of Ubuntu. And you've heard all the definitions. I am because you are. We are people through other people. We are interdependent. And so Ubuntu, in a very real way, is the soft power that South Africa presents in a hard world. It is the idea that human beings are interdependent despite the differences of race, despite the differences of language, despite the differences of religion and every other difference. That we are interdependent and that therefore our humanity is what defines us and our humanity is what drives us. But Ubuntu has a hard edge because it uses the words also of the scripture that says we are each other's keepers. We have a responsibility to each other, we are accountable to each other, and we call each other to account. And that is the art of speaking the truth on both sides of the equation. And so when we have our demons as Muslims on the one side of the equation, we need to call them out. And when you have your demons on either side of that equation, you have the accountability under Ubuntu to call them out so that the world finds its equilibrium and your religion stands as a religion of that equilibrium. It is inspired by the Quran that says to me in the dark days of apartheid, that Allah, God, has shown us the two ways. وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ فَلَقَتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ. But you are not making haste on the path that is steep and difficult. How can I describe to you what this difficult path is? And in describing the difficult path, it is not the path of praying, of fasting only, but it is the path of freeing in the day of slavery, freeing in the days of hunger, embracing the stranger, looking after those who have been deparented. Then you are of those who believe. Belief is contingent on that. Then you are of those who do good. Good is defined by that courage. Then you are people of truth, that you stand up for truth, irrespective of its discomfort to you. And you are then people of compassion. And those are the things that we need to be in the days of hunger, in the days of marginalization. And therefore, what we need to be able to do is to define what interfaith is. Because for some, interfaith is an opportunity for competitive faith. How good is your religion versus mine? How do I get adherence from you and you prevent you getting adherence from me? For some, faith, interfaith, is comparative. We pray like this and you pray like that, and there's merit in that. For others, faith is cooperative. Let's work together on this campaign, shoulder to shoulder, etc. All of that is good. But when faith itself is staring down the barrel, then faith needs to be collaborative. When faith and religion is both the doctor and the patient, then it admits its vulnerability as a phenomenon in this world, and it says, let's hold hands together because we are fighting an existential battle for faith and religion itself. And so, when we embark on that work, we begin to see the obvious vertical divides between Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Jew, Jain, Sikh, Buddhist, non-believer, etc. Those vertical divides are very easy to see. But within those vertical divides, as we found out in the anti-apartheid struggle, there are also horizontal divides which bring some of us closer to each other. Because some of us are, across our religions, so orthodox that we find ourselves in a state of inertia. Some of us are so extreme that we find ourselves as a nihilistic phenomenon in the world, that we are destructive in the name of our religion. And they have more in common with each other than they have with us. And some of us are the middle ground, the people who find meaning in doing the work of God amongst the people of God. And therefore, to end, when we spoke last year, and we spoke about the predictions for the future, those predictions have become matters of urgency today. When last year we spoke about a looming populism, that populism of last year in Brazil has become the mainstreamed extremism of today, manifesting itself across the world. When we spoke about last year, how differences are trying to coexist, the differences of last year have become the divisions of this year. When we spoke last year about the looming tensions that are emerging, the tensions of last year have become full-blown conflicts this year. When we spoke about the vulnerable last year, the vulnerable of last year have become the victims of massacres and starvation. When we spoke last year about the fears that people have, the fears of last year have become the intolerances of this year. When we spoke last year about those migrants looking for peace and for well-being in the world, the migrants of last year have become the deported, the outcast, and the discarded of this year. And so, when we spoke about this idea of populism, populism has its fingers this year on the buttons that can defund health programs. Populism has its fingers on the buttons this year that can fund wars. Populism this year has an impunity that can do whatever it wants with permission from the world. And so religion must, in the name of faith, and drawing from its deep and profound spiritual resources, religion cannot appeal to the powers that be, because they themselves are often compromised by their interests in a world where trade wars become pernicious manifestations of the will of a person or a government. The ears that are waiting for us are the ears of the people of the world. We have seen the campuses rise against the capitals. We have seen the streets become restless against their palaces. We have seen the ordinary people begin to speak. And so, while we speak to the powerful, we ignore those who really want our guidance, who want to believe again, who want to understand the manifestation of God. And the closest they will come is to find it in the churches, the mosques, the synagogues, the temples from which we preach. And if we compromise because we need to be good with our governments and we need to escape their surveillance, then we have compromised on the very truth that the world needs. And if we can't do it, who will? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rasool, for that very strong call for us to reflect and redefine what faith and interfaith work looks like for us as individuals. And I hope that ranks strong in all of our hearts. We will move on now to the second plenary, which is titled Action on Hunger and Poverty, which will be moderated by Amanda Khozi Mukwashi, who is a resident coordinator from the United Nations.
Good afternoon. Domela bomele bondate. Can I invite the panelists to please come and join me up front? I think you know yourselves. If you could just, we have limited time. So this is going to be quite, it's not going to be a marathon. I think it's going to be a sprint. With the speed of King Mosoma, the first messenger. Okay, do I have everybody here? No? Thank you. Thank you so much, and I'm glad you came back after lunch, because I think it was quite a long morning. The conversation that we are about to have now, if I may call it a conversation, is a little bit hard. So I am praying for each one of you that you open your hearts, you open your minds, because we are looking at ourselves in the mirror for this particular conversation. So far, I think we've looked at many people. We've looked at government, we've looked at civil society, we've looked outside, but for this one, we need to look at ourselves in the mirror. And to set the context, I'm going to say 4 things. Not necessarily in terms of what I believe in. I will share my views later. For now, I just want to set the context. We're talking about poverty, and we're talking about hunger. And it can be argued that as people of faith, religious organizations and institutions, we are very, very good at responding to humanitarian needs. So when somebody needs food, we go out. When they need clothes, we go out. When they need saving, we go out. That is charity. It can also be argued that what we are not so good at is justice. Asking the question, why are they starving? Why are they hungry? Why are they in conflict? Why are they in the situation that they're in? It could further be argued that our spiritual imperative as people of faith is not just to ask the why question, but to see to it that we tackle the root causes that have placed people in such situations in the first place. I won't go into issues of colonization, decolonization, because I believe that there will be a side event that talks about that. But it is worth considering that actually, perhaps we are now the mirror image of the very politics that is holding many people back. My second point is that there was a study that I read about recently that says that over 50% of all global wealth is held by people of faith, in particular Christians. That if we brought in all other faiths, that percentage would go very high. I believe that earlier on we were given statistics in terms of how many people consider themselves affiliated to a faith. We run the majority of schools in the world as people of faith, religious institutions, and quite a significant number of hospitals. It was already mentioned earlier on that we also own a lot of land. It can be argued that the politicians that we have been talking about this morning as those who make decisions are actually people of faith. Because we are in politics, we are in hospitals, we are in schools, we teach, we are in communities. This year marks 30 years since the Beijing World Conference on Women, and yet women face more violence than ever before. Violence against women has become something that is very normal, not outside, but inside spaces of worship. I just want to repeat that violence against women has become a normal occurrence in places of worship and religious institutions. Climate change, finance, infrastructure, digital technology, these things are all interconnected and form the basis and foundation on how people experience hunger and poverty. My last context setting is that our conversation must now ask ourselves if we are some of the wealthiest people and institutions in the world, if we own over 50, 60% of schools and run them, hospitals, we are in politics. In many countries that I have worked in, politicians always go and pay homage to people of faith because they know that the influence that our religious leaders have over who votes and who doesn't vote and how they vote is significant. Then surely we must accept that the state of the world as it is today is an indictment on us as people of faith. If I was to quote the Christian scriptures, I would say, we are instructed and commanded to be the salt of the earth. But the reality is that, are we? Is a question. And with that, I'm now going to invite my panelists. You have very little time, maybe about 3-4 minutes each, for you to start sharing your reflections, remembering that after this, There are going to be side events, and hopefully in those side events, you can actually begin to interrogate some of the issues that are going to be raised here. I would like, before I close, to get 4 questions from the audience, one from there, one from here, one from there, and one from there. So please think about it as we have a conversation, because I'll come to you before I close with 5 minutes. Who would like to start? Or should I just volunteer you? Please go ahead. Thank you.
I'm David Beckman. I've spent the last 35 years organizing people of faith and conscience, mostly Christians of all stripes, to lobby the U.S. Congress to try to get the U.S. government to be an instrument for justice, an instrument for the reduction of hunger and poverty. When I started in about 1990, according to the World Bank, 4 in 10 of the world's people lived in extreme poverty. It's now down to 1 in 10. So from my perspective, it's not where we want it to be, but from my perspective, we've seen that this is possible. It is possible to get to the end of hunger and poverty. Also during that period, especially from 2020, or from 2000 to about 2023, the U.S. government, I think, played, at least its aid program played a helpful role. Also in terms of trade opportunities, I'll go up, that was a good thing. So I'm dismayed that right now my government, the current administration, is leading efforts, leading the reduction, in my country, almost the disappearance of international aid. Also, my government is restricting international trade. It's the leader of a movement to have more restrictive international trade. President Trump is supposed to chair next year's G20 forum, but he decided early on to withdraw the United States government from any participation in this year's G20 process. It's a big deal. We have, with the G20, that the most powerful government in the world is absent from the process. I'm even more dismayed that I think U.S. religion has been more harmful than good in this situation. The majority of white Christian voters in the U.S. voted for Trump in 2016, 2020, and 2024. It's evangelicals, but also some Catholics, some mainline Protestants, some young black men. It is true that the leadership of nearly all the church bodies that are organized nationally, the leadership has been working continues to work very actively to resist cuts in international aid, also cuts to programs that help poor and vulnerable people in our own country. Mostly, we didn't win anything, but we did just recently. Congress actually pushed back on funding for PEPFAR, child nutrition, humanitarian assistance. It's the first time they've pushed back all year, so maybe all's not lost. The G20 and the COP30 is a big, those two together, both led by governments of the South, are really big opportunities to try to get more momentum in continued progress against hunger and poverty. And the issues that we're most likely to push, the continuation of the alliance Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, Jubilee 2025 agenda, maybe something about Gaza. These are things that, if they were adopted by the G20, could move forward in some ways without much help from the U.S. government. But what I want you to know, one more sentence, is that there are a lot of people of faith and conscience in the U.S. who are doing everything we can to get our nation and our government onto a better track.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad that you brought us back to people of faith, because I think that's where we probably need to focus on for this conversation. And one of the questions that I would like anybody from the panel to actually address is, how can we, as people of faith, hold each other accountable for tackling systemic poverty and injustice? How do we do that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nick Talubale. I work for the Organization of African Instituted Churches. We are dealing with the whole issue of hunger and the poverty. It seems as if the whole issue of income poverty, we've made some progress. But when you look at Africa in relation to hunger, about 19% of the population of Africa, when the population was just about below 1 billion, in 2005, we are living in a state of chronic hunger. In 2024, according to the latest report, which came out late July, of the Food and Agriculture Organization and the other UN agencies, 20% of 1.5 billion people are living in a state of chronic hunger. So what do? Let me just go to Africa. We know, that 70 to 80% of the food we eat in Africa is produced by smallholder farmers. So, faith communities, can we invest more in the smallholder farmers than a little more in the pajeros and the construction? Can we balance that? Number two, can we bring a voice to policymakers to make public policy more responsive to the people who produce the food we eat, not at the global level, at the regional level, AU, at the national level, and to the sub-national level where we are? Can we come up with social accountability mechanisms and engage those policymakers who are coming to our faith communities in relation to those who are hungry, so that we go beyond relief to turn around the structures on which hunger is built? Can we look at the place of women who are the main producers? They own less than 10% of the land. They produce, they don't own productive resources as men. It's clear, it's been written in one of the studies, that if women had the same productive resources as men today, even without investing anything, 100 million people globally will come out of hunger. So, can we work on that? So, what is the way forward? I'll give two. Number one, as a churchman, the pastoral response. The direct response, yes, humanitarian when people are in extreme hunger, invest in smallholder farmers, in the productive resources to enable them to move forward directly from faith resources. Number two, let us influence policy, not many more policies, but let's get policy off the paper to the home of the smallholder farmer for productivity. I end by saying, what will turn around this? Target 2.3 in goal 2 of the SDGs. We are saying by 2030, double the productivity of smallholder farmers. We are not far from it, yet we can far from it if we remain with lackluster action. But here, we are calling ourselves to act, to be more pastoral and to be much more prophetic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Can I just remind the panelists that there's a gentleman, good-looking gentleman in front of us with some very interesting cue cards. When you're speaking, please just have a look at him occasionally. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I think as we talk about investing, for example, in smallholder farmers, the producers, let's also connect this conversation to the previous one, on debt. Because post-1945, when Western Europe needed to rebuild, there was a Marshall Plan. And there was a lot of money that was placed in the Marshall Plan. And the reason was piecemeal aid doesn't transform. What you need is enough investment that is actually going to address issues of infrastructure. I work in Lesotho. The mountains, in the mountainous areas, it's over 3,000 meters above sea level. It is not easy to get there. You need proper, adequate investment in order for Africa, in this case, to have a fighting chance at being competitive in the digital space, in the food system space, climate space, the HIV space, public health, and so on. So, let's make sure that we are balancing the conversation in order that we need to lift both sides in order to actually make that difference. Ladies, I know you're dying to come in. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I observe all protocols. Thank you, Chair. I think before the cue cards begin, let me just say in my 3 minutes, I would like to make 3 points based on what you have asked there. I think the first one has been a resounding point we've heard throughout today, that it is possible to end hunger and poverty in our lifetime. It's a commitment we have to make. It's something we have to stick to, but it's possible to do it. I'm not the oldest person in the room, but I'm also old enough to know the amounts of advancement that humanity has made over the last few decades. In your phone, you carry, and we're often hearing this reference, you're carrying a device in your phone that can do wonders. The whole world in the pocket, and we have done that, but we can't solve hunger and poverty. And I think this is why it comes back to that whole question of commitment and the dedication to stick with that. And if the people with money are people of faith, what is preventing us from solving this problem? The second point I would like to make is hunger is human-made, based on everything that has just been said here today. The questions around what debt is doing to countries that we live in. Hunger is human-made, but so are the solutions, right? Everything that's been said here are things we can do something about, things that our government should do something about. Investments, innovation, ensuring that business is encouraged, I don't want to use the word forced, to invest where they should, to invest fairly and not in the ways that exploit people and deny people access to basic food. The third point for me is a legacy of success, whether it's for the G20 or for the Interfaith 20, should not always be in starting new initiatives. Continuation is essential. I think we have a tendency as human beings to keep wanting to be the one who invented or who innovated the other thing. But we have to remember that a lot of effort goes into starting things. So last year at the G20, there was a commitment made in Brazil, the creation of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. And many of us see that as a very important milestone. So how do we ensure that South Africa and subsequent G20 hosts are continuing to invest in that? The Global Alliance Secretariat should be equipped to provide countries with that policy basket that enables change to happen. If we start another new initiative, we have to invest money to set that thing up again. We have to invest more money to create meetings for that thing. So we keep perpetuating our inability to succeed because we keep starting over. So I really think that that's an important point that we should take away. And we're in South Africa here, which is the first country to host after Brazil. That should really give us that. Last point is to say on that point around continuation and solutions to a man-made problem are also available to humans. is that we have continental processes to support what was being said there about smallholder farmers, like the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program. A lot of work has gone into developing this 10-year program to improve agriculture and end malnutrition on the continent. But are we going to stand behind it and make it work? An African initiative that has a very good chance of success if we commit to it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. If I can push you a little bit, my question still hasn't been answered in terms of how do we hold each other as an interfaith group, religious groups, how do we hold each other to account for addressing a systemic poverty? Because what I'm hearing is what the G20 countries need to do, but what about the groups, the religious groups? What do they need to do? What difference are they going to make? That's the question that I really would like pursued, if possible. I'll come back to you as you think about it. Let me go to...
Greetings to all leaders who are here today. I think as leaders, we need to walk out of this gathering today knowing that there's a reality that we are about to face. All these people who are our followers, they will be looking at our face. As a leader, you really need to ask yourself about the big challenge which is coming in our ways, which is the lack of food. So the question of today is what are we doing about it? Now, today I am standing for Imboni Dr. Uzulezwe Radebe, who was supposed to be here, but it could not be here. But all these answers that we're talking about, the holding of a leader, or you hold the leader accountable, he is a perfect example that already right now, he is busy with his farming, preparing for the big challenge ahead of us. So today, I was not going to speak on his behalf because he prepared a video to share with all these leaders to see what he does on the farming already, preparing for the unseen. But we know that is coming. And I want to add the last thing. We cannot but be sitting back and looking at the government and saying what the government is doing. We need just to get ready and do something ourselves. That is my input. If when we've got time, we can play the video, we can see exactly what I'm talking about. Exactly what we said this morning. We said we would like to learn from each other as we walk out of here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will let you know if we have time. No, not just now, please. Can I have the other speaker? Yes, please, sir.
Thank you so much. I want to try to go a little deeper. The first thing which I want us to understand is the difference between poverty and hunger. Hunger is a natural instinct. Each and every person gets hungry. Now, poverty is when that hunger, which is a natural instinct, cannot be fulfilled. The question is why? Now, you cannot attribute that to laziness, because laziness in the scriptures appears only 7 times as a contributing factor. So, what it means is that unless you deal with the system that denies the fulfillment of the natural instinct, which is hunger, you can continue to describe how many victims are falling on the wayside? Now, poverty is caused by a system or systems. How do we change and transform the systems so that we should not have the victims of hunger? Unless we do that, for example, debt, it doesn't come only on its own. It comes because it's part of a system. Debt, it's part of a system. If you don't deal with that part that creates that system, it will continue to make sure that poverty continues and therefore hunger is a resultant of that. The problem we have, we don't go to the root of the problem. We deal with the causes and we deal with the effects. I want to give an example. In a village that I was part of, with an outbreak of malaria, you know the cause of malaria is what? It's mosquito. But there were lots of health officials who came with ambulances to take people to the hospital. But each time they were treated in the hospital, they were returned back to the village. And they were bitten by mosquitoes. So there was a vicious cycle. Until somebody said, let's kill the mosquito. When you kill the mosquito, you reduce the possibility of having casualty going to the hospital. And therefore you can release the money of the hospital to do other things. And this is the connectivity which I want us to focus on. Until we do that, the action we can prescribe is going to be a superficial action because you're not dealing with the real cause of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come in? You would like to go last. I have somebody else who I've given that slot to, but it's okay. Yeah, we'll take it from this side. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Andrea.
Hello. Okay. Thanks, everyone. It's really good to be here. I want to just kind of go out of protocol quickly and thank all of those who supported this event. I think particularly I learned from some of my colleagues at the World Council of Churches, before you eat, you should always thank everyone along the chain, the supply chain that grew the food, that produced the food, that transported the food, and that served us the food. And I think we'll be eating a lot of delicious food over the next several days, and I just want to acknowledge those people. My name is Andrea Kaufman. I work at World Vision International, which is a Christian development, humanitarian, and advocacy organization. And so my comments will really reflect values and beliefs coming from the Christian tradition, but I think really will resonate with others coming from different faith groups. They'll also be deriving some things that we've learned and heard from listening to children and local faith communities through a series of nutrition dialogues over the last year, helping to understand those root causes and drivers of hunger. And so first of all, we believe in a world, that God created a world of generous abundance. I think that's been said by many. And yet we live in systems and structures that are built on a scarcity model that encourage competition versus collaboration, that seem to encourage hoarding versus sharing. And I think as people of faith, we have a moral imperative to speak out and to advocate, to remind people that we live in a world of abundance where there is enough, as the Archbishop said this morning, that we would have life, that we would all have life, and that we would all have life abundantly. Second, I think we believe that poverty is fundamentally about broken relationships, relationships with ourselves, with God, with others, and with the creation. And that leads to broken systems and structures of injustice, of oppression, of marginalization, leads to a world where we have to ask the question, why are children starving? Why is starvation being used as a weapon of war and various things? And as we listen to faith communities and children about drivers and opportunities, solutions, they all saw their own role. To answer your question, local faith communities certainly see their role in addressing, both on an interpersonal level and a systemic level, poverty and hunger. But they also saw themselves as one part of a bigger whole. And so I think collaboration is essential. I think we also have to understand and address the spiritual, the faith-related, the value-related root causes of poverty and injustice. This can be anything from food taboos or resistance to accessing healthcare. But there are also huge assets in the faith community. We talk a lot about the volunteers and the services and the programs, but there's also spiritual practices of prayer, of tithing, of fasting, of hospitality that really can drive solutions. And then finally, I think as faith communities, we bring hope into the conversation, often deeply rooted in our faith, and that hope drives action. There's a lot of scientific evidence now to back up the importance of hope as a driver of action, but we see, again, faith communities all over the world doing things, reducing waste, and they're committing to reducing waste in their own faith practices and festivals, incorporating nutrition education for children, scaling up community gardens, supporting school meals, so many things that are vital. And so just to kind of, as we go to our different sessions this afternoon, I think I'm encouraging myself, what does it really mean for each of us to lean into a belief that our world is a world of abundance, that it can and must be a world where everyone, all have fullness of life, all have life abundant. What does it mean for us as faith communities to come together to reform broken systems and to really live out that act of hope in very tangible ways?
Thank you, Andrea, for flagging up those questions. And it's my hope that we are going to interrogate them a little bit further. So how do we come together to actually influence, challenge those policy decisions and policy choices that are being made? But we still haven't answered the question, how do we hold each other accountable? Because I truly believe that unless we look at ourselves in the mirror as religious institutions and faith, people of faith, then what the world is seeing when they look at us is a reflection of themselves rather than a beacon of hope and difference that actually can make the world a better place. Can we have the video, and then I'll come to you last. So the video of Dr. Uzwilezwe Radebe.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed dignitaries and revered spiritual and religious leaders. Speaking here is Imboni Dr. Uzwilezwe Radebe. I wear many caps, but my main calling and main cap is I'm the founder and leader of the Revelation Spiritual Home, which is a spiritual institution that guides and leads people on spiritual matters as a spiritual guider. I'm also a spiritual guider to a sitting king of the Amahlubi Nation. And also I have began and opened an association for indigenous spiritual practitioners recently, which that is the cap that I come to the G20 with here today. My apologies for not making it physically to the conference. Thank you very much to the G20, to the organizing team, the committee, who have invited us and treated us with utmost respect. But I had other commitments that are abroad. Everything was planned. I thought that I would probably speak on Sunday, which I was willing to come, or at least on Monday. But I understood that speeches would be given, I think, from Wednesday. But nevertheless, with the help of technology, here I am. I've pre-recorded for this session here today. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers of this significant event. It is an honor to address you on issues that profoundly affect our societies as we explore sustainable paths for communities across Africa. The theme, Action on Hunger and Poverty, resonates deeply with me as it aligns with my commitment to restoring the African person to her authentic self. Dependence and insufficient resources contribute to the challenges we face today. Poverty and hunger are pressing issues on the continent. Africa has the potential to feed itself and become a major global producer. However, as of 2023, 1 in 5 people in Africa faces hunger, compared to 1 in 11 worldwide, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization. By 2030, over 582 million people are projected to be chronically undernourished, with more than half in Africa. Despite having abundant natural resources, Africa continues to struggle with poverty. The effectiveness of measures to address this crisis has been limited because we often overlook African solutions for African problems. As we gather, we speak the wisdom of our spirit guide us. Yet Africa has drifted from her spiritual roots, which holds the key to her solutions. African indigenous spirituality, as we term it AIS, and indigenous spiritual systems are vital to both African and global frameworks. AIS has profoundly influenced our cultures, traditions, and governance systems, as well as the roles of traditional leaders. These spiritual frameworks offer essential principles that have shaped human history. Jacob Olupano notes that African spirituality is intertwined with every aspect of life, while Mbiti emphasizes its impact on the cultural, social, political, and economic dimensions of African existence. Holt adds that spirituality encompasses all of human life, evolving in various ways across different cultures. The wisdom of ancient Africa highlights the vital role of spirituality in guiding humanity. Thus, a disconnection from AIS can lead to degradation and chaos, a challenge we currently face. How do we fix this problem? We must return to our essence as a people of compassion, kindness, love, and humility. Embracing the concept of Ubuntu, a core spiritual value of the African people, means acknowledging its roots in indigenous spirituality. Without this understanding, Ubuntu risks becoming a hollow phrase. When addressing Africa's challenges, we need to apply Ubuntu from its spiritual foundation. Humans are not just flesh. We are spirit first, influenced by spiritual beings, including the Creator, our deities, and ancestors. Those who engage with Africans must understand the spirit realm, as it holds the answers to our questions and not rely on the limited human intelligence. We refer to our spirit guiders as abantu abadala, meaning the elders, because they see beyond us. And we call our Creator Imfihlo Yezulu, he who is of mystery, because he holds the keys to life's mysteries. We cannot navigate life without engaging with these spiritual entities. Ultimately, we may gather to debate, but the success will elude us until we recognize that we do not hold the power to find solutions alone. How I have applied Ubuntu to mitigate poverty and hunger in Africa. I stand before you as an African spiritual guide, dedicated to restoring authentic ways and revitalizing the economy of our people. To achieve this, I founded Trillion Cut Investments, which embodies the motto, sharing wealth. Trillion Cut Holdings operates a unique distributor model that shares profits with distributors based on their sales. This approach empowers thousands of aspiring entrepreneurs to become producers rather than just consumers. We provide individuals, regardless of their previous business education or experience, with basic business training and transforming them into skilled business professionals. This initiative not only promotes economic growth, but also tackles issues of hunger and poverty in Africa. In the agriculture sector, we utilize our farm to cultivate crops and employ young people who have little to no farming skills. We help them develop their abilities and achieve financial independence for themselves and their families. It is important to highlight that our farm is wholly owned by us, and all our initiatives are not funded by the government or external organizations. Additionally, through my offshore property company, Golden Lofts, I have organized groups of individuals and introduced them to the lucrative yet challenging real estate markets in Dubai. On July 1st, 2025, I handed over the keys to their investment properties abroad. I believe business should not only focus on profits, but also meet the needs of their communities and society at large. Likewise, our governments should strive to enhance the quality of life for the people they serve, rather than merely seeking revenue through high tax rates. With many Africans burdened by inherited debt, we must rethink how we support their livelihoods. Our financial systems often lack the spirit of Ubuntu, viewing individuals as mere sources of revenue. Those in advantageous positions should reflect on whether their actions contribute positively to humanity. In conclusion, now more than ever, the world needs authentic spiritual guiders, leaders who are genuine and dedicated to shaping our global future. While some try to direct humanity toward better outcomes, they have not yet fully succeeded. At that end, thank you very much for paying attention. And my last parting shot will be that we need to work together. The governments, business, religious leaders, especially stretch out our hand to indigenous spiritual leaders and guiders, because at times they are the ones that are being shut out of decision-making positions. Let's work together in order to have a better future. I have clearly outlined our indigenous spirituality and how it can assist us to achieve our goals for a better future. And I've also used some of our own personal examples of what we are doing in our own space, meaning that we also walk the talk, but we don't just talk, but we walk the talk. We hope that you all have a great conference, and we hope that our solutions will be spread and others can learn something. And we hope that moving forward, we can also be part of these groups in order to bring a better life for our societies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm just going to get straight to the point. Really in answering the question of that Prof posed, how do we deal with the systematic problem? We're going to have to prescribe a solution that is based on a system. My theology is for that reason that it's informed by the fact that development can never be a transaction, but it's it's a covenant that is rooted in prosperity, in justice, and stewardship. But let's address the elephant in the room. Where are we going to get money and capital that can eliminate poverty? Where would that money come from? I've looked at 3 areas or categorized poverty in terms of the poverty that they call dignified poverty, which relates to 4 billion people in this world who still are under that poverty, and extreme poverty. And then you have the balance of those who survived the poverty. It is therefore important to ask ourselves a question: why faith organizations, including even traditional leaders, are never taken that seriously when decisions are made? And I posed that question to investors and funders, and they said, but what do they have to lose? So it's important that we also ask ourselves this question: what are we bringing to the table? So part of how we address the issue of capital is, one, we need to reflect on the global alliance being localized. The people of Langa, they don't know about global alliance, and global alliance cannot be confined in the boardroom of Rome. But it has to be localized, because poverty, it is going to be defeated in the villages. But secondly, I dream of a poverty alleviation deal room. It is a deal room where rural projects will be packaged, and they will meet with investors and funders. And thirdly, I'm putting it as a challenge to all of us. How much can we put together as a contribution to the fund that will address the issues of poverty? We are all believers, and you can never go to this forum empty-handed. So if we are serious, let us be like men who met 40 years ago, and they spoke of starting a bank called African Bank. In that first meeting, they managed to put together 140 because they said we have to put something. So I challenge all of us that what is it that we can put together to fight poverty? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really hope that we can take that challenge on, because the question of what do we bring to the table when we're having the discussions, when we're talking about influence, is so critical. And if we don't come together in terms of our resources, then we cannot ask of the governments what we ourselves are not prepared to put on the table. We cannot say to them, act together, when we as faith leaders are failing to act together. I think that, let's think about that challenge. I will come back as I sum up, but can I just check with the organizers? Do I have time? Yes, I okay. I will. 10 minutes. Thank you. No, that doesn't mean you have 10 minutes. Right. Over to you. I'm just joking.
I only need 3. I'm Julian Mayer from the University of Western Cape. I'm very proud that Archbishop Mukwashi is the Chancellor of my university, and I'm glad that the speech went well this morning. I'm going to give 2 provocations and try and answer your question. Provocation 1, there's enough food. Not only is there enough food, there will be enough food. There's so much food that we waste 30% of the food. There's so much food that the biggest problem in many developing countries is not that people are undernourished, they are malnourished. 60% of women in South Africa are overweight or obese. This is not because they are rich. This is because they are poor. The diets that they eat are the affordable diets that they can eat are unhealthy. They're also unsafe. So there's enough food. Food is not the problem. The distribution of the food, the access to the food, the affordability of the food, who controls the food, these are the things which are the problems that we need to be addressing. The second is that poverty has not come down. I'm sorry. Poverty has changed. We used to measure poverty by saying it's $1 a day or it's $3 a day. It's an amount of money. But what has happened is that people have moved from rural areas where they used to be able to grow some of their own food, where they used to be able to build their own houses, and now they live in shack settlements on the sprawling edges of metropolis cities across the world. Here, they must buy everything they eat. Here, they must pay often exorbitant rents for the shacks that they live in. So money is not the problem. It's what you can buy with that money, what is available. We need to think about how governments are going to do things like provide social protection, old age pensions for those who are too old to work, child support grants for children who are unable to access their own incomes and are reliant upon what their parents might bring. Social workers who are able to guide people what to eat, how to look after themselves. What are their rights? How do they make sure they get those rights from those who hold the duties? Those are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about investing. So those are my two provocations. There's enough food. It's the distribution of food. It's the inequalities and the injustice that matters. The second is that poverty is still very much with us. Even in the USA, even in the UK, there will be people who are doing without, not because they are below $1 a day, but because of the kinds of circumstances that they find themselves. So let's not put poverty off the agenda. It's very much still with us, and the numbers are larger than they were. Now to answer your question, my colleague here with the soundboard seems to have forgotten me. I hope I've got minutes. To answer your question, I too come from a community, not a community of faith, but a community of science. We too have problems of how do we hold each other accountable? How do we ensure that colleagues recognize the conflicts of interest that they sometimes have to take up when they engage in kinds of research? The responsibility to care for our students, to make sure that our students become valuable members of society. We have many conflicts that we need to deal with as well. I lead a research group that focuses on food security. My funders are very insistent that we can demonstrate that we are of use, that we make an impact. So they're not interested that we have so many people citing our work or we are so famous. No. What is it that we do? And so we try to evolve a theory of change. And maybe that's something you could think about. How is it that why do we think we can bring about change? What do we think are the pathways to be able to develop that change? And how do we ensure that accountability? So it's a quite deliberate process of trying to link what it is that we're hoping to achieve to our theory of why we think we're going to be able to succeed in doing that. And that's my contribution. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really, really sorry. I apologize because I had wanted to take at least the 4 questions, and I don't think I'll be able to because we've run out of time. So let me sum up in terms of the things that I think as we go to the different side events, maybe we can interrogate them further. Absolutely, I think you're right. The issue of food is a complex one, and we have to look at the complexity of what type of food we have, who has access to it, who can afford it, when, how. And I think it's part of the food systems value chain. And within that, it is a business proposition. And unless people of faith and religious institutions are able to understand and engage with that business value proposition, then we run the risk of not being able to address the issue. You talked about poverty as well. And I think the nature of poverty and the scope of poverty is also evolving. You raised something that nobody else put on the table that I don't want us to lose, because it's probably one of the solutions that we can think of when we look at how we work together, which is the issue of social protection. How do we ensure that the bottom is not abject poverty, is not destitution? How do we lift that up so that the person who is experiencing multiple disadvantages or vulnerabilities in our society is not completely, totally destitute, malnourished, and has absolutely nothing? And we don't have time for this, however, one of the things that religious organizations have been really good at have actually been in the area of social protection. So if we can come together on that, we can create a buffer zone for those that are suffering in our midst. I think that my brother, Mr. Dube, yes, I think you talked about the elephant in the room. And I think one thing that we haven't been able to tackle, and we were never going to tackle it on this panel, is that one, the economic system is hardwired to serve a few, okay? There are three layers. There's community, there's national, and there's global. The economic system is hardwired all the way to the global system. And that's why we're talking about the financial institutions, the financial architecture needs to change. Two, we talked about, earlier on we heard about the debt relief, debt restructuring, and so on. I want to leave you with this, that when you look at, again, please forgive me, I'm going to quote from the Christian Bible. When you look at the story of the Israelites as they came out of Egypt during the Exodus, right? The instruction from God was, let my people go so that they can worship me. If we are people of faith, which we are, and we believe on that spiritual freedom, which we do, there is nobody globally who is going to be free or who is going to be able to worship their God unless they're free. So those two imperatives are so critical for the interfaith movement, that you take care of the spiritual element, but it is not to serve us, it is to serve God. That people need to be free, and freedom is one leg, justice is another leg. That's how they walk. And if they're able to do that, then they will be able to actually worship God and be free. So I think with that, I have probably not touched every single thing that everybody talked about, but we are living at a time when business as usual is not going to help and it's not going to deliver. We need extraordinary actions for extraordinary times. And I would personally love to see the interfaith movement be seen as an incredibly powerful, influential, and transformative catalyst in the G20 conversations. And I think we would be able to do that. But it needs our leaders to come together, because churches are full, people are worshiping God, they go home to sleep without a meal, over 800 million of them every single day. And we have to ask ourselves, what do they see when they look at us? Thank you so much, Kialeboha, and God bless.
Thank you very much for that wonderful session, and I hope the call to action is clear that competition happens at the bottom, but collaborations happens at the top. So you as interfaith leaders have a responsibility when you go out of this room, how are we going to collaborate? And with that, ladies and gentlemen, again, in the spirit of Ubuntu, we are going to take a half an hour break. But listen, this is very important, all right? Half an hour. After that half an hour, we are going to turn this room into breakout room 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you need to remember where your breakout rooms are, please scan the QR code on your name tag. Room 5 and 6 are upstairs. You can take the elevator or you can take the stairs. They are in the mezzanine, all right? So breakout room 1, 2, 3, and 4 down here. Breakout room 5 and 6 upstairs. If you need the specific topics on the breakout rooms, scan the QR code on your name tag. If you need assistance with scanning, find anybody young. They will help you. With that, thank you very much and see you in the next 30 minutes.